All right, guys, welcome back. Beautiful day. We're at the park. Got an exclusive one here for you. Here with my cousin. We are we. This is blood ties, man. We experienced a lot of the same type of things. Of course, different things, but we know what comes in this world. So, just want to introduce you guys to my cousin, and he's here to tell a little bit about his story and things he's experienced throughout his life. What's up, man?
Hello, I'm Diego.
Yeah, you got, how old are you?
29.
29. Okay, cool. So if you can just tell us like a little bit about how you grew up in childhood. What did that
Um,
look like?
I grew up with two teachers that were my parents. They were teachers. They're educators, so it was very important growing up. I think going to school and they were always around for sure, but they definitely worked a lot. So once uh, we'd go to school, we were always together. We were always together after school too. I had babysitters when I was before that. My grandmother, our grandmother would babysit me. Um, but it was definitely a healthy place to grow up. They weren't around all the time, so definitely things happened that weren't normal, but it wasn't their fault. But they were very important, so I definitely had to graduate high school. Definitely had to do all that. I'd say my addiction started when I was 14 years old, so I was a freshman in high school, but it extensively grew worse for sure. It started off with pot and stuff, and but before that, it was great. We'd always get our holidays together. Me and Daniel, same family. All half obviously on our mom's side, and it was definitely a childhood I wouldn't trade anything for. Um, Nothing, that was so intense that I realized right at the beginning, but reflecting on it, you could see where there was, when my parents were working, that was where the biggest times where things might have happened, I think. But it was a beautiful time for sure.
Yeah, priceless, man. Love the family parties, just hanging out, eating good food, just chilling with family, man. That's inactive addiction. While we're wrapped up in active addiction, that's one of the things I tried to avoid. When there was a family party and I wasn't looking my best, feeling my best, I avoided all of that. So I missed a lot of those experiences, and it was by choice. I wasn't confident and happy with the way I looked, with the things I was doing in life. So, I missed out on quite a few parties, but definitely cherish those times.
It's cool that you're mentioning that. Just because, actually, when I finally got caught, when my parents realized what I was doing, I mean, they knew I was smoking pot and stuff once I was 14. Come home, my mom's like, "What's that smell?" or something. I got caught because we were smoking before school one day, and I had to go to in-house suspension. Right when I walked in, the guy who was watching us was like, "Come out into the hallway," and he's like, "Did you smoke pot? Because you reek, And I was like,
Oh
"No,
man.
I didn't, sir." And he's like, "If you were honest with me, I would let you stay." But he walked me to the assistant principal's office. I was 15 years old, and my dad worked right across the street. And I was at Tucson High, and they called my dad, and he came in, and I had to tell him that I'm smoking pot for a while, and he started crying. I remember, and he was just broken for sure. He was definitely talking about God and stuff, and I just didn't want to have it, and that's when I got caught. But uh, when they found out I was doing hard drugs, it was I wasn't really avoiding stuff like you were saying. It was actually our grandmother's birthday at our uncle's house, and I kept going to the bathroom, and I was in there for about 30 minutes, I think, and I came outside, and my dad wanted me to, I'm sure people were talking, our family and stuff, and my dad wanted to take me to the hospital, and I went to the hospital. It was our grandmother's. She must have been turning, I think, like 80.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was. I think it was around her 80th birthday, and I went to the hospital. And as soon as I went to the hospital, I went to go to the bathroom, to inject drugs. And that's when the nurse knocked on the door, and I came out, and she sat me in a wheelchair, and she wanted to pull my sleeves up, and that's when I kept my arms down like that, and she went up to my ear. She's like, "Were you shooting drugs in there?" And my dad heard, and he started crying, and then that's why I let her roll my sleeves up, and I said, yeah. And they immediately got me into a room and stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if I had an infection or anything. I think they just wanted to, get a checkup and stuff. And that's when I went into the room, and my dad called my mom. And I remember he sat my mom down. He's like, tell my mom. And I told her, I think I was 17. I told her I've been shooting up cocaine for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when, she broke down. And, my brother, his wife came over, and it just kind of became to the open how deep it was.
Yeah.
And it was because we were at a family party.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to stay home and use, but I didn't. And I couldn't even leave my stuff at home and be, present in the birthday. It was, our grandmother's one of the strongest, if not the strongest woman in our family. I would say her and your mom are definitely my inspirations for strength, and especially from a woman's standpoint. I didn't grow up with sisters or anything, so that was something really big, I think, that I missed.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, what was your drug of choice?
At first, it was pot, and then we went to psychedelics and stuff. But mine was cocaine. It was injecting cocaine. I first tried it when I was 15 or 16 years old, and I kind of just fell in love with it. It was it makes you, very like, I wasn't sure if I was dying or if I was, it's
Yeah.
the rush that I really really liked,
Yeah.
and it was the whole aspect of using, a needle that I kind of really liked, and it's very sick. I was scared of all that stuff before that, but once you try something and it clicks, you definitely can't not avoid it anymore. It was definitely cocaine.
Yeah. You mentioned something that's huge that I resonate with, and I think I did a video about it, about just being not only addicted to our drug of choice, but to the actual ritual, the whole procedure of it.
Yeah,
That was really huge for me.
it could have been foil and a straw, or
That
it
was
could have
mine.
been, yeah. That's what mine was the last 2-3 years too.
That was mine. I always took a roll of foil under my passenger seat, a lighter, and half of a Circle K straw. That was my kit.
Yeah,
You
or
know.
you couldn't even write. I couldn't even write with pens and not think about it. Or when I was a
Yeah.
kid, eating soup with a spoon, I'm like, these normal objects become things that you can't even see them. Like, you're in treatment, you see a straw on the floor, you're like, oh shit.
Yeah. Right off the bat, I was in rehab, and they had foil in there because we had to cook our food, and that was kind of a trigger. Like every time I saw foil, I associated it with heroin.
Yeah.
With black.
And living on the border, it's so much harder for us because, if we were on the East Coast, we'd be getting packets of like dope and stuff, and over here it's way more cheaper and it's very readily available, and we have like actual, cartel members in our city and stuff.
Yep. As far as like your experiences in that whole life, how is life like in comparison from Tucson to anywhere else you lived? Like, was Tucson your only stopping grounds?
No, when I was 18, I moved to Phoenix first for sober living, and I didn't really use out there too much unless I had a relapse. And uh, Phoenix definitely is a different kind of playground. It's kind of a jungle in some places, I've heard. But Tucson was definitely my stomping grounds until I was 24 years old, and then I moved to Los Angeles, and that's a whole different kind of beast. I would say half the time I was using, half the time I was sober. And LA, and my old neighborhood was MacArthur Park area.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Latino neighborhood. It's ran by 18th Street Gang, and then I wasn't a gang member. I never, wanted to ever become that. Although I did kind of admire that kind of lifestyle.
What you admire about it?
Just it's almost like a brotherhood in a way.
Yeah, I see that.
And then like there's those families that their dads banged or their moms did or their cousins, so like it was open in families, and that's so much different from ours. So but a lot of those people, all they have is their other fellow gang members. And when you're on the streets, you don't have normal friends. You could have people that were in your life, but as soon as they get tired of your shit, it's you're by yourself.
Yeah.
And when I was out there, it was kind of like these guys that were in the neighborhood were the ones that I could go up to every day. And, they were like, oh, what's up? It seemed like they were glad to see you, but in reality, you're kind of money walking up, or you're, you know, just some source of something they can get from you.
Yeah.
And I never saw it like that, but LA was definitely my stomping grounds for the last 5 years almost. And it was scary for sure. It's so much different from Tucson.
Yeah, I watch a lot of different types of like addiction recovery prison channels on YouTube, and what is that place called? I just mentioned it.
Skid Row.
Skid Row. Have you ever been there?
Yeah. And
how was that experience, man?
So Skid
Everywhere
Row
it just looks filled with that life.
Yeah, they don't talk about it, but Skid Row is at least 70% black. Or 80%. It's very sad. It's so sad because there's neighborhoods like that are more Latino, that are black, or Chicano, or my old neighborhood was like South America. There was a lot of people from El Salvador and Guatemala, but Skid Row, it's so sad. It's 80% black, and nobody talks about that, and there's a very high crime rate. Nobody trusts each other because you're not supposed to trust each other. There's murders, there's shootings, there's violence for sure. There's sexual assaults. It's just somewhere that's it's like a horror story for sure. Cops don't go there. If they do, they're driving around, shining their lights at people. They're not going to really get down to mess with the people. They're just kind of trying to use intimidation tactics, and that's what also other people do. You have to have tough skin to go down there, and it's not a smart thing to go down there actually. It's crack cocaine, PCP are the biggest drugs I would say down there, besides meth.
Right now?
Yeah.
How about the blues?
Blues are not actually
really
in California.
That's what somebody told me.
When I was down there, I was trying to find them, and I was, money wise, I would spend like $100, and you would get like 10 of them or something. And down here, it's sad. It's like $1 for a pill. So out there, it's fentanyl powder, which is very deadly.
Mm-hmm.
I overdosed twice on it, and the first time I was injecting it, second time, I was smoking it on foil, and I took 3 hits, and I died right there. And a woman kept me alive. She was doing chest compressions for 15 minutes while the police came. Mm. I woke up, I still had my phone and stuff, but that was right outside Skid Row. I had just gotten off of work. I was wearing a suit still.
Yeah.
I was wearing a suit, just dead on the floor,
oh, man.
Yeah, I woke up, and the paramedics were like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you're going to end up in a tent down there. And they were right. I eventually lost my home and stuff. I was never really on the streets long term ever. Never had a tent, never had to set up like that, because the times where I was up for 4 or 5 days, and I'm not strong like that mentally. It takes a different kind of strength to be able to be homeless on the streets and stuff. But
got that right. That's one thing about whether we're in Tucson, Phoenix, or LA, our addiction follows us.
Yeah, everywhere you go.
Us, man. And it doesn't let go, unless we do something about it. So what's your experience with like detox, rehab, any of that?
First time I went to any sort of treatment, I was in an IOP. I believe I was 17 years old. And it was just a group after school. And I don't think I ever took anything seriously with recovery until I was early 20s. I went to rehab when I was 18 years old. I went to Chandler Valley Hope, which was a beautiful place to go.
That's in Phoenix?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Chandler.
In Chandler, and then I moved to sober living afterwards. Mm-hmm. I would say the saddest thing about, or the most sobering thing about treatment is when I first went, I had a really good group of people. You got so close to friends in there. And from my first group, it's about 60 people. If you go into a place with 30 people, you're going to be the first person or the last person that gets there. There's going to be those first 29 people that are going to rotate out while you go in. So eventually you're going to be the person that's been there the longest right before you leave.
Yeah.
So there was probably about 45 to 60 people that I met, and within 5 years, 6 people died. And that was really, really hard. I had friends that died from suicide, that died from overdoses. Um, Half were suicide, I think, and then half were overdoses. My first friend that passed away, his name was Chris. He was blind, I remember, so it was really hard for him. And yeah, he passed away from suicide. And I had my friend Matt, who ended up killing himself, and then my other friends overdosed. So that was the first group that I went with.
Yeah.
And once I was in my early 20s, I started going to AA and stuff more. I did it when I was younger, but I actually went for my own choices.
Mhm.
And then it wasn't until earlier this year I went to rehab again. It was February, so I waited 10 years about, and a lot can happen in those 10
Yeah.
years.
Even in a week.
Yeah.
Even in a week, man.
So I went to rehab twice this year.
Okay.
And then detox 2 times as well.
Okay. So what did life look like before your last relapse?
That's the thing. I haven't had long-term sobriety, so I'd be clean for about a month at the most, and then it's relapses in between and stuff. And so when I get life, like, where I mess up maybe once or twice for 2 3 days, and then I could stay clean for another 2 weeks, and maybe I'll mess up again for another couple days, that's when things look the best, because it's like the longest term sobriety. I can get good jobs and stuff, and then I just lose it all. Earlier this year, or December to February, I had my own home with friends. It was a 5-bedroom apartment. I was a manager, supervisor. I was making the most money I've ever made. So it was really nice being able to be financially responsible in some aspects. But once again, I wasn't really covering all my needs. My parents were always kind of helping me and stuff. So
yeah,
it was really tough to kind of lose it all, because I've never had it for longer than a little while.
Yeah.
Sorry, my dad's calling.
That's all right. When it comes to like addiction and that whole type of world, I guess what are some of the craziest things that you experienced or seen while you're out there?
Say the craziest things that I've experienced were, it was all health wise. It was things that happened to me because of my addiction, because of the griminess that I was. You hear horror stories, and you see the worst of the worst. And I was really bad with injecting stuff. I never tried to be safe. Like, you go to the doctors, they swab you up with alcohol, they have gloves, they have brand new stuff. That's how I wanted it to be, but I never lived like that. I had to go to doctors every 2 months just to, do blood tests to make sure that I was staying, or that I was not contracting, HIV, anything like that.
Hep C.
I did get Hep C when I was 19 years old, 20. And I just wanted to inject cocaine. And the guy that I was picking up some needles from was like, I have Hep C. This is the only things I have. And I didn't even give a shit. I went home and I didn't even use bleach to even try to kill it, and I had it for 10 years. And then there's Southern Arizona AIDS Foundation here. They helped me cure it. It was a $40,000 medication that they gave me for free.
Wow.
But some of the worst things that happened, some of the craziest, were infections that I had. I contracted MRSA, and it would gone into my bone marrow and my femur, my hip, and my spine. I was 19 years old, 20, and it almost went septic. That was really, really scary. I had, abscesses that were, it was horror stories, really, in reality. And then, recently I had a friend that was shot in front of me. That was really scary. Other crazy things, is it was seeing things on the streets that were really scary. Like in LA, it was my old neighborhood. There's an alleyway that I would go to, and there was at least 100 of us in there. I call it Fenny Alley. There was 100 people at least smoking fentanyl and doing drugs. And I saved 3 different people from overdoses there. One of them, I had hit them with Narcan 5 times. He was about 300 pounds. And I gave him some fentanyl. I walked away down the block, and I saw him fall off his wheelchair. And I took that personally, because I gave that man the drugs, and thank God he survived.
Yeah.
Those were some of the craziest stuff, or it was just consuming so much, like whether it was psychedelics or something, and it was just
Yeah.
You know, I was in high school injecting in the bathroom. It was a lot of things, you know, um, that kind of builds up strength and or weaknesses, you know, and a lot of it was trauma too that I experienced. And I think I could look back on it and just admire that I'm still alive, you know.
Yeah.
The craziest, probably one of the most craziest things was when I overdosed. I was taking Xanax as well as injecting fentanyl, and because I was on Xanax, I didn't care how much I was doing. So I did an injection. I walked down a set of steps, and the sun was still up, kind of, and this woman had pushed a fire alarm when I was injecting. So I tried to get out of there quick, and the fact that she pushed that, the fires were on the way already. So I overdosed right after that, and when I woke up, the sun had set. So I was unconscious for over a half hour. I have no idea how my brain. I'm guessing I had a little bit of air coming in or something because I survived. Um, that was definitely probably the craziest thing. It was New Year's Eve in 2021, and I'm just glad to be alive. I'm glad that I didn't pass away. It was in front of a crispy, crunchy chicken restaurant, so that's where I would have had
Wow.
a memorial, and I'm just glad
Yeah.
that that wasn't my life. You know, my parents, everyone would have had to go to LA to visit that spot, and I'm sure nobody would ever want to go to see that. You know,
Damn.
A lot of the craziest stuff was in LA for sure.
Yeah. Man. So lastly, if there's any youngsters out there or even adults, man, and they're thinking about engaging in trying the blues or like the powders, the pills and all that, they just want that head change, what would you advise them?
I would say definitely double think or double check about what you're doing, about why you're trying to change your head. For me, it's because I get uncomfortable from certain things that happened in my past that have created, you know, just different problems with me mentally. Um, I would say look at that stuff and see if there's a professional you can talk to. Sometimes you can't talk to therapists about everything. I get scared about the police getting involved, you know, and stuff. And I would say look at why you are doing these things. I would say stay away from other friends who are not even, they don't even give a shit about what your life looks like at all, you know. Talk to family and stay away from the pills because they are something that is just brand new coming out still. It's about 4 years that these things have been around, and we don't know the long-term effects. We know that it's 50 times stronger than heroin. You don't need to be doing this stuff.
Yeah.
I would say look at, you know, meditation, look at hobbies, and then just take it from people who've gone through these things. You don't want to be addicted to uh, a pill. You don't want to be addicted to things that they hurt your family, you know, and they hurt you. Life is so important, and you know, we could be in our late 20s, late 30s, and finally get out of it, or you know, you could be 21 forever. I almost died. I was 27 years old the first time I overdosed, and you know, that's a 27 club. I could have been
Yeah.
27 forever. You
Heard
know,
of that, yeah.
I could have not been sitting here with you right now. So I would say just look at the beautiful parts of life and what you want and try to go get it.
Solid, man. Solid. There you have it. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks for watching, guys.